Today, I'm going to show you how to create a leveled assessment. So what I did before we began is I created a folder that's going to house all of my assessment components for my first assessment. Inside that folder, I have created 4 separate assessments. One with simple and familiar questions, which is a level 1-2 on the IB scale, more complex and familiar, which is level 3-4, challenging and familiar, which is 5-6, and then challenging and unfamiliar, which is our level 7-8, along with an assignment called Final Assessment Chapter 1 Work. Now, since I'm a math teacher, I want students to upload their work. So for this final grade assessment chapter 1, I want them to upload their work so that I can look at it. If you do not want students to upload your work, I will show you the option there in just a minute. So when I created these 4 assessment pieces, each one has 4 to 5 questions. The setup is really up to you. So if there's a time limit, now my students can use a calculator on this, they can highlight, they can use a notepad. I do not want the students to see the answers after they attempt it, and I only want the students to attempt it once. When I originally created it, I named it Simple and Familiar Level 1-2. Now you can put a due date. I made it out of 100 points just because it's like 100%. I enabled the submissions. Now my category here, I have created a category in my grade book that says assessment component, not counted towards final grade. I do not want this part to count towards their grade. So I've got this category and I've chosen to use numeric. Now I have gone through and created 4 questions for this section. I have done that for each one of these. So all of these I have created ahead of time and put into this folder. So what I want to do next is find the completion rules. So I'm going to go to options and do student completion because I want the student to pass the first part before they go on to the second part. So requirements must be completed in sequential order. That is imperative for this to work properly. So I have all 4 of these in the order in which I want them to be accomplished. So the first one, member must view the item, make a submission, or score at least. Now, this is something you'll have to talk with your colleagues as to what you want them to have in order to move on to the next. Just for today's sake, I'm going to do 50%. So a student must score 50% on the simple and familiar to get to the next level. So now I'm going to add the next requirement, which is more complex and familiar. Score at least 50. And it doesn't need to be the same. It's just up to you, however you and your teammates have decided. So in this case, just 50%. Now, I'm not adding this next requirement here because this is the last level. There's nothing after this level. So I'm only going to have these 3 here because after challenging and familiar, if they score at least a 50%, they'll move on to the next. So I'm going to click Save Changes. Now, when the students complete these, they'll have to score at least 50% to move on to the next level. Now, this last one, this is where I am going to put in the grade the students earned. So if a student didn't scored a 45% for challenging and familiar, I might want to give them a 5 on this assessment. So what I've done here is created an assignment where I will input the grade on my own. Now, I want my students to upload their work. So you don't have to do that. What you would do if you don't want any work submitted, you would want to turn off submissions enabled because you don't want anything turned in. This is just where, in the end, you're going to put the student's grade. So this is where I have the category assessment. You can put a due date in there, and it's my M middle school IB scale. So I'm going to save changes, and my assessment is complete. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like from the student aspect. Okay, when a student goes to take the assessment, they'll click on the folder, and the first thing they'll notice that the only option they can click is this one right here. So we're going to click on Simple and Familiar, and I'm going to go ahead and start my quiz. So I'm going to say 3 to the third power is 2. I'm going to show you what happens here. Find the value of the power. Well, 4 squared, that is 16. 121 is a perfect square. That is true. 169 is a perfect square. We're going to say that's false just for the sake of the assessment. And so you can look to see. I have attempted all of those. Yes, I'd like to submit my work, and my score should pop up here momentarily. If not, go ahead and hit reload the page, and it'll pop up and it shows that I got a score of 50. Now, what that means is if I go back, I have now unlocked the next option. So here, I'm going to show you what happens when you don't pass. So we're going to say the answer is 1. I'm a big fan of the answer of 1. 1, 1, 1, and well, we'll get 1 right, 75. Okay, so I have finished all of these. Yep, I'd like to pass that. And I'm going to go ahead and sometimes you need to refresh. Uh-oh, I did not do so well on that one. So if I go back to the assessment, chapter 1, you'll notice I cannot go any farther because I did not score at least a 50%. Now, as a teacher, I can go back and give that student a 2 because clearly they have not demonstrated that they can solve more complex and familiar problems.